Welcome back to Open Line. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are talking about National Crime Victims' Rights. With me, I have Tina Fox here from the Board of Parole. Also Pastor Joey Spann with me from Burnette Chapel Church of Christ. Always taking your phone calls. We have Lucy on the line. Lucy, thank you for being with us tonight. And by the way, thank you for your voicemails. I got them, and I truly appreciate what you had to say. Go ahead with your tonight's comment or question.
Well, thank you, Ms. Sharp. I'm going to try not to get choked up. I don't want to take any attention away from the other crime victims, but Reverend Spann, I sat out here and watched your interview after you were shot, after they brought you out and you talked to the press.
Yes.
And as a Nashvilleian, I want to thank you for the way that you answered the questions, because it shows what type of integrity that you have. And I've met you before. I don't know if you remember. It's been about 17 years ago. You and a few of your parishioners invited me into your church because I was doing research on the church and the land surrounding that land, that church. My ancestors owned that land, and they had sold it to the church when it moved, you know, a long time before that, before it moved up there, before they had flooded the lake.
Right.
And my great-grandmother got married in that church in 1888, and the gentleman that had bought some land from my great-grandfather back in the 1850s, he is J.T. Burnette, and that's what Burnette was named after.
Right.
So, and I've met some of your parishioners since I met y'all that day, and I just want to say, if anybody wants to go to a sweeter church, it's Burnette Chapel, and I would like to know if y'all would be willing to accept some stuff I've been collecting for y'all for your great big yard sale. And I did want to come by the church because I didn't want to stress y'all out, but I've got some stuff saved up for you. And that's all I want to say. You really are a wonderful person, and your church members are as well. Okay?
Thank you.
Lucy, thank you for calling in tonight. Always good to hear from you. You know, we were talking in the commercial break. Nashville is really small. Your mom went to Burnette Chapel Church of Christ. That's right. Just, you know,
we've known each other for years.
Yeah. Lucy has her own personal connection. You told me the church is changing.
Yes, and the yard sale she's talking about, and all the film that they show on TV about Burnette Chapel, they show our sign which had biggest yard sale. Well, that was the day before. So we're not having that same yard sale right now. But it's something we will do again later. We did it for our young people to go to Bible camp and things like that. So, but we're not having that go on right now. And as far as that interview from Baptist Hospital, that was wasn't a hard thing to do.
Really?
Yeah, and I joke a lot, and the very first line I did when we walked in, they said there'd be 3 or 4 there, but there were like 50 to 75 people in there, but no one was in charge. And they said, I rolled in, I said, well, how are we going to do this? They said, well, just tell us about that day. And I said, well, we had a real good sermon. and I waited, and there was not a laugh, and it was nothing but crickets.
Right.
And then so I gave him another chance. I said, you know, I'm the preacher, and still nothing. And it hit me. For 3 days, part of my healing is humor, and for 3 days I lost a finger in the episode. And for 3 days in the hospital, we were using humor to cope. And so when I went before the TV, the people in there weren't ready for humor, but everyone who knew me, they got it immediately, and I got so many calls thanking me for the joking. And I had a whole lot talk about the forgiveness, you know, that we offered and stuff. But you know, we really feel that way. We really do forgive the young man. He went to church with us, you know, and I've told so many people, if he were to have come up that day, the church was over and we were shaking hands at the back, if he would have come walking up there, we would have hugged and just said, man, we have missed you, where have you been? But that didn't happen, you know. But we have forgiven that. Now, the family of Mel, they're having a harder time, and I understand that. My granddaughter went out first, but she went to the right, and Mel went to the left, and he was waiting on the left. If he'd have shot my granddaughter, you know, I don't know about the forgiveness, but from where we are now, it's what we're supposed to do. We forgive him. I want him to be punished, but I don't want him to go to hell. You know, I hope that somebody reaches him and touches him and changes him. We really do, and it's not just me; it's our congregation. You know, he did something horrible to us, but God is taking that and making good come from it. So we forgive him, and I
think it's a very powerful message that some people may not expect or know how you arrived there, but that's where you are.
Well, it's the message of Jesus. You know, I made this statement and put it in some article somewhere. Being a Christian and having grown all these years in the image of Christ, it would have been harder not to have forgiven them if I'm truly growing into Christ's image. And when I came back, someone said, they misquoted you in that. I said, what are you talking about? They said, well, you said it would be harder not to, and what you meant to say was it was harder to forgive them than you thought. I said, no, they quoted it right. If I'm going to step in the steps that Jesus stepped in, when something happens to me, like happened to Christ, one of those steps is the step of forgiveness. And someone asked me how. I think God in his wisdom has told us to forgive people for our own healing. I don't think it's for Emmanuel's sake. You know, I don't know if it will even affect him. I hope it does, but I don't know. But I know that it has affected us as a church, as God's people. I have someone that I love dearly who says he hasn't forgiven them, and he's been having to go to counseling over that, and he's really struggling with that. And I've talked to him, and he preaches. He preaches, and he sees. He's struggling with what's going on inside of him, where forgiveness would alleviate that and helps the healing take place. If I didn't forgive him, I don't guess I could be healing. I don't think.
I appreciate hearing your story, because I think that it points out the journey that so many victims take. None are alike, I'm sure. I'm sure you have seen this through your work with the Board of Parole. Every victim has their own journey, and having people to walk alongside you is so crucial.
Oh, yes.
What kind of services are available to victims?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question, and you're absolutely right. The journey is different. The emotions, however, are the same. And so when we talk with crime victims, particularly prepping them, coaching them, educating them on the parole hearing process, you get the same types of emotions, but a different crime. And so the services that are available, obviously the parole board educates crime victims to help them navigate through that parole hearing process. It's a challenge. Understanding the criminal justice system. It's not the best system, it's the only system. And so we have resources through the Tennessee Voices for Victims that we refer victims to. You have the Power, other resources that are available. Victims compensation is another one. And so we do have resources. We don't advocate, we're not advocates at the parole board, but we do have and work with victim advocates to get crime victims where they need to be for resources.
I think something you said, all of it's poignant, but something that stuck out to me, because I covered the court system as a reporter for a long time, and I would see this shock with every family who came through the court system as a victim's family. Very few people know how our court system works, how our justice system works. They're surprised by how long things take. They're surprised that not everything turns out fair in their book. They're shocked by this. Do you find that as well to be the case?
Absolutely, absolutely. What victims want is justice, and oftentimes justice is prolonged, and oftentimes justice doesn't happen, and so they are displaced emotionally. They believe that they will get justice, And we know that there is no true justice for any crime victim.
Right. The justice would be it not happening.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, but we at the Parole Board try to educate crime victims. That's why we have a Victim Services Division. And one of the things that I have recognized as the State Director of Victim Services is that the parole process is the only process in Tennessee that gets crime victims through the parole hearing process. And so it's unique. It's a process that is needed. It's a process where crime victims have the legal right to attend and be actively engaged in. So we don't take that lightly. We want to make sure that when crime victims call to attend a parole hearing, that we get them not only to the parole hearing, but through the parole hearing.
I imagine it's pretty traumatic for some folks to do.
It is. It's an emotional roller coaster ride for crime victims, and it's also an emotional roller coaster ride for us who work with crime victims, because when you see victims who are hurting relentlessly, when you see victims who are displaced forever, and all of us need to realize that we are only one minor step away from a major catastrophe, just like we saw with Minister Spann. And so it happens to the best of us, and it can happen to the rest of us. And we just need to have that compassion to and for crime victims.
Let me jump to the lines real quick. We have Carmen, who's been so patient with us. Carmen, thank you for holding on the line. What's your comment or question tonight?
My comment is for Mr. Spann. He was my Bible teacher when I was at Ezel Harding. And I want to let him know that I had fallen away from the church, and not that it's a good thing that he was shot or the tragedy happened, but seeing this happen, I realized I needed to get my rear end back where it belonged and turn myself back to God. And you have once again moved me 30 plus years later, so I wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Carmen. Appreciate it.
And I still love you. You're still my favorite teacher I ever had.
You didn't have real good ones, did you?
Carmen, thank you for calling, and gosh, thank you so much for holding to say that.
Come visit us, Carmen.
You're welcome. I plan to.
Good.
What are your service times? I don't want to scare anybody.
Yeah, 10 o'clock on Sunday morning and 5 o'clock Sunday night.
Well, I will see you Sunday morning.
Oh. That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Love you.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
I told you before the show, when we were interviewing folks right after the shooting who knew you, they often talked about you as a basketball coach, and your sense of humor, and you being such a great teacher as well. So obviously, Carmen echoes that as well.
Thank you.
But you know, that must be one of the miracles, one of the blessings out of this tragedy, right there.
It was good to hear that, you know, and that's one of those things where the man who was asking, would you push that button, because so many things like that has happened. You know, just so much good has come. I don't know if I would take it back or not, to be honest, other than what I mentioned. I just, you know, what is her coming back worth? You know, and others that I've had that from numerous people. Was that worth the finger? Sure. So it's and words like she gave are encouraging the older you get, you know, but all the Ezel Harding students that I had back then, my Good Pasture students, and the ones I have now at Nashville Christian are all just great. But the memories of her time period was special. Yeah.
Okay. We have to take another quick break. Much more right after this. Stay with us.